Hi, welcome to Watch It Played. My name is Rodney Smith. In this video, we're going to learn the 1 to 4 player game, The Gallerist, designed by Vital Lacerda and published by Eagle Gryphon Games. Art doesn't just enhance culture, it can also line the pockets of the gallerist who promotes the right artists, draws in the best clientele, and curates the grandest collection. High art and great fortunes await, so join me at the table and let's learn how to play. To set up, start by putting the main board in the center of the playing area. The cards with this design on the back are called contract cards. Shuffle them up and place them on this space of the board, and then deal face up 4 from the top into these designated spaces. The pieces with these backs are reputation tokens, which you'll shuffle face down and then randomly place enough to fill in these 12 spaces. Unless you're setting up for 2 players, as we are, in which case you do not fill in the center column. Now deal 1 more of these face up onto each of the 4 white circles that you'll find printed on the board, returning the rest to the box. These are the artist tiles. They come in red and blue, and one side will show a track like this. Ensure all of the track sides are face down, and then shuffle all of the artists into a single pile. Now draw artists from this created stack one at a time, placing each into one of these 8 spaces that match both its color and the symbol found here. These symbols represent the 4 types of art forms found in the game. Anytime you draw a tile whose space is already filled in, return it to the box. Also, flip the first blue artist that you draw face up, but continue placing the rest of them face down. Proceed like this until all 8 spaces have been filled in and return any remaining artists to the box. Now place a white cube on the first numbered brown space of the face-up artist. The rest of the cubes you can place in a pile beside the board, or as I like to do, you can put one beside each of the artists to be used later. Now these are the artist bonus tiles. Mix them up and then place one face up randomly on each of the artists into this space. But do not place one on the artist that was flipped face up. Once all of the tokens have been placed, return any remaining ones to the box. These are the artist signature tokens, and you'll find 2 that match each artist's color and art form type. Stack all of these pairs together and place them in the space beside the appropriate artist. These are the works of art tiles that you'll sort into the 4 art form types as indicated by the symbol here in the bottom right-hand corner. Then shuffle each of these stacks and place them onto the matching spaces found here on the board. These tiles are double-sided, so make sure that the side face up is the one that shows most of the symbols here across the bottom like this. Now take the top art tile off of each of these stacks. Shuffle these together and then draw a number of them equal to 1 less than the number of players, putting each on one of these easels. We are setting up for a 2-player game, so I only need to draw 1, and I can return the rest of the box along with the unused easels. These are the visitors. Use all of them in a 4-player game, but remove 2 of each in a 3-player game or 4 of each in a 2-player game. Now place 1 white visitor onto each of the red artists in the indicated space shown on their tiles. Take all the rest of the visitors and mix them into the included bag. Now randomly draw and place a number of visitors onto each of the stacks of artwork based on the number of tickets showing on the top tile. There are 2 tickets here, so I'll draw 2 visitors. This one only shows 1, so only 1 visitor is placed. Just keep in mind the color of the tickets doesn't matter, just the number. Draw 4 more visitors and place them in this central area known as the plaza, and put the bag with the rest of the visitors in an area nearby for use later. These are promotion tokens which you'll stack on their matching spaces found here on the board. These tickets should be sorted by color and placed on the board here. You'll use 20 of each in a 4-player game, 15 of each with 3 players, and 10 of each for 2 players, returning the rest to the box. Create an area beside the board for this bank of money and these celebrity tokens. During this video, I'm going to keep the bank off screen and I'll draw from it as required. Now each player sets up their personal gallery by taking a board and 10 assistant figures that match its color. You'll place 8 of the assistants in the spaces here, and the remaining 2 you can put into any 2 of the empty desks pictured here. You also take a gallerist pawn in your color and an influence marker that you'll place on space 10 of this, the influence track. Each player also gains a value of 10 in coins from the bank and should take one of these player aids that will remind you of many of the rules in the game, as well as define several of the icons that you'll encounter. Now shuffle these art dealer and curator cards and deal one face down to each player, returning any unused ones to the box. A player can look at their own cards but don't show anyone else. Each player has 2 spaces on the board representing their gallery, which is outlined in their color. The solid lined area is the gallery itself, and the dashed out line is the lobby. Place a randomly drawn visitor from the bag into each player's lobby, ignoring galleries in colors not being used if you have less than 4 players. Choose a random start player, giving them this token. And then, starting with the player to their right and going counterclockwise, have each pick a location to start on, represented by those large white circles that we put the tokens on earlier. When you've picked a spot, put your Gallerist there and collect the token. This you'll place face up on your player board in the space that matches the back of the token that you've collected. Once everyone has placed their pawns, return tokens on unchosen spaces back to the box. And that's the setup. In the Gallerist, players will take on the roles of up-and-coming art gallery owners, attempting to gain the most wealth by the end of the game. The game is played over a series of rounds during which each player will take a turn, starting with the first player and going clockwise around the table. On your turn, you're considered the active player, and you must take a location action. You always start your turn with your Gallerist pawn either in one of these 4 spaces, which represent the 4 locations where actions can be taken, or back in your own gallery. If you start from a location, you must move to a different one. If you start from your own gallery, then you may move to any of the other 4 locations. Either way, once you arrive at a space, you must perform one of the 2 actions available there, which are represented by these symbols. Also, when moving, you may leave one of your assistant figures at the location space that you just left from. We'll see the benefit of this in a moment, but note that the assistant must come from either one of your desks or from another location that it might already have been on. Either way, you can't use the assistants found here on this side of your board. We'll learn the various actions you can take at the different locations in a moment. But before or after you take your location action, you can choose to take a single executive action. Let's learn about those right now. One option is to move visitors by using tickets. We'll see how you collect tickets a little later, but once you have some, you may discard any number of them with a single executive action. And for each discarded, you may move a visitor that matches the ticket's color 1 space towards your own gallery. You can even move the same visitor more than 1 space by using multiple tickets. Either way, these visitors must come from the plaza or from any player's lobby, even an opponent's. However, tickets cannot be used to move a visitor that's already inside of a gallery. Also, when you take a visitor out of an opponent's lobby, it must first move to the plaza, and then it can be moved to your own lobby. As you spend tickets, place them in a discard pile that you'll form near the board. As an example, if I had these 3 tickets, I could use an executive action to discard 2 white tickets, moving this visitor from my opponent's lobby into the plaza, and then into my own lobby. And discard this brown ticket to move the visitor in my lobby into my gallery. The colors do represent different types of visitors. These white ones are known as collectors, pink are VIPs, and brown figures are known as investors. There's no limit to the number of visitors you can have inside of your lobby, but there is a limit to the number of these white collectors that may be inside of your gallery. That limit is equal to 1 plus the number of paintings you've sold during the game. You're reminded of this with the icons right here. So at the beginning of the game, when I've sold no paintings yet, I can only have at most 1 collector inside of my gallery. The other executive action you can take instead of moving visitors with tickets is to use a bonus from a contract card. We'll learn how you acquire contracts like this one a little later, but once you have, they are first placed with this side face up onto one of these 3 spaces of your player board. Once here, you can now use an executive action to take one of your assistants, either from a desk or a location space on the board, to place it onto the card here, immediately gaining you the benefit of the symbol found underneath. There are many benefits provided by icons like this one that you'll find on cards and tokens in the game, and we're not going to go over each one, but they're clearly explained on your player aid. For example, this one allows you to immediately move a VIP or investor visitor from the plaza directly to your gallery. Each contract may only hold one assistant, so leave it there to show that it has been used. Later, if you sell a piece of art, you'll be able to return an assistant from a contract back to a desk. Then the contract is flipped over. Now you'll have a new space where you can assign an assistant with a future executive action. So to summarize, on your turn, you must move your gallerist to a location and perform one of the two actions listed there. And you may, if you wish, leave behind one of your assistants in the space that you left. Also, before or after taking that location action, you can choose to perform a single executive action. When moving your gallerist, you may go to a location with another player's piece, either their gallerist or an assistant that they had left behind. In either case, the piece that is there is then kicked out and moved to the adjacent black circled space. The active player will continue to fully finish their turn, and then when they're done, the player that was kicked out has the option of performing one of two possible kicked out actions. One option is they can perform an executive action, and we know that that is either using tickets to move visitors or claiming a contract bonus. The other kicked out action you can instead perform is moving your influence marker backwards on this track to the next space with a fame icon. That's this star right here. Once you've done that, you can then perform one of the two actions at the location that you were kicked out of. Just keep in mind that if you were kicked out and you didn't have another fame space to move backwards to, then you cannot perform a location action. Performing a kicked out action is optional, but either way, an assistant that was kicked out is then returned to an empty desk on that player's board. Or if it was a gallerist that was kicked out, it is then moved back to the player's gallery into the space here. You can even kick out your own assistants, but doing so does not provide you with a kicked out action. Instead, just return the assistant to an empty desk on your board. We'll see later that you can acquire new assistants, and if you would ever need to return an assistant to a desk and there's no space for it, instead, you remove it from the game. Now, let's learn the different actions you can take by visiting the various locations on the board. This location is known as Artist's Colony, and you can go here to take the Discover an Artist action. To do this, you need to choose one of the face-down artists that have not already been discovered. Let's choose this one. Now you resolve the bonus shown on the token here, which can be determined by looking at your player aid. For example, this one allows you to choose any two tickets as long as they're not both the same color. So maybe I'll take these two. After resolving the token, you then return it to the box. Now flip the artist face up and place a fame marker onto the numbered brown space of its fame track. Then collect one of that artist's signature tokens and place it onto this, the commission space of your player board. This token will provide you with a benefit, as we'll see later, but while you have a token here, you may not take an action to discover another artist. Also, you discover red artists in the same manner, except they also have a collector visitor, which you then move directly to the plaza. So that's discovering an artist, but let's look at what you do if instead you move to this location to take the Buy and Exhibit Art action. Let's assume the purple player has moved here to do that. First, they choose either a discovered artist with an available signature token beside their tile, or one they already have a commission token for. The purple player doesn't have a commission token, but this artist has a signature token, so they can choose to buy artwork from them. The topmost art tile from the stack that matches that artist's art form is the one they will create for you. Now move all visitors from that artwork to the plaza. If you are buying from an artist you do not have a commission token for, you pay an amount equal to their current fame. Let's pretend for a moment that this artist's fame was 10. The purple player buying artwork for them would then have to pay 10 coin from their supply back to the bank. If you have a commission token matching the artist you're buying for, then the art is considered the work that you commissioned when you discovered them. In that case, you only pay an amount equal to their initial fame, regardless of what it currently is. The yellow player, as you might recall, did commission artwork from this artist, so if they were to buy from them, they would only have to pay 3 coin. Before moving on, let's put this artist's fame back to where it was. Now, after paying for the artwork, you increase the artist's fame by the amount showing inside of the star on the piece of artwork that you're buying. So in this case, we'll increase it by 1. Plus an additional 1 for each collector in the buyer's gallery. In this case, the purple player doesn't have any. Now the player gains the tickets showing on the work of art. In this case, the purple player would gain a pink ticket and either a white or brown ticket. And I'd like to point out there are spaces here on your board for the tickets that you collect. You then collect the artwork that you've purchased. Now you flip the artwork over and add it to the leftmost of these 4 spaces. If you don't have space to add another piece of artwork, then you cannot take this action at all. If you bought this artwork from an artist that you did not already have a commission token for, you claim a token from beside their tile and place it to the right of this art value track here at the space that matches the artist's current star rating. This is determined by looking at their fame track, so I'll just move the artist here so we can get a closer look. Their current star rating is either equal to the stars on the space of their fame marker, which doesn't have any currently, or the next closest pictured stars moving backwards down the track, in this case, 1 green star. So we'll place the signature token beside the 1 green star on this track. If instead you were buying artwork from an artist you had previously commissioned, you would not take a new signature token, you would simply move the one on the commission space to the correct position. Just keep in mind that a single artist may never have more than 2 works of art on the market at the same time. So if both of their signature tokens are in use, as is the case with this artist, then a piece of artwork cannot be bought from them. Unless, of course, you have one of their signature tokens on your commission space. They owe you a piece of artwork, and once you buy it, then of course you move this token out to the appropriate space. That said, a single player can be in possession of both of an artist's works. As we'll see later, when you sell work, you return their signature token back to their tile. So if the purple player was to buy from this artist again, they would get another piece of their artwork, put it into their gallery, and claim this other signature token, putting it on the value track as well. After buying a piece of artwork, the final step is drawing a number of visitors from the bag equal to the number of tickets shown on the newly revealed piece of artwork. As during setup, the color of the tickets doesn't matter, just the number of them. You'll notice the 4th slot in your gallery has a star. You may not use this space unless you are currently exhibiting a masterpiece, which is a type of art we'll learn about later. Also, when you purchase a piece of artwork that fills in this space for the first time, take the token there and put it on top of the artwork you just acquired. Remember, to do this, you always have to fill in artwork from left to right. So you would already need to have artwork in these 2 positions. Then, at the very end of the turn that you acquired this artwork, you take the token there and place it onto any one of these spaces as long as they're empty. You ignore the benefit showing on the token itself and instead claim the benefit on the space that you covered up. So in this example, I would get to collect any 2 tickets that aren't of the same color. These are called reputation tokens, and anytime you place them on an available space here, you're reminded by these symbols that you must move 1 visitor of your choice from your lobby to the plaza. If you don't happen to have any visitors in your lobby, then you can ignore this requirement. And if you would ever gain a reputation token and there are no empty spaces to place it in, you instead return it to the box. Now, let's take a look at the sales office. Here, you can take an action to sign a contract. Do this by taking one of the face-up contracts here, or you may first choose to draw 4 new contracts from the deck and lay them on top of each of these spaces. Now you can take one of the newly revealed contracts, or you could decide not to take one after seeing what is revealed, but that is generally not advised. If the deck is ever empty when you would need a new card, reshuffle any previously discarded contracts together with all those currently in the display to make a new deck and then place 4 new ones out. When you take a contract, you place it in one of these 3 spaces of your player board. If the space is empty, you gain the ticket shown on the space that you're covering up. So in this case, the player would collect a brown ticket. You can even place a new contract on top of a space that has one already, as long as the old contract has been fulfilled, meaning that this side of the contract will be face up. There might even be an assistant on it. To place your new contract here, simply return the assistant to an empty desk. Discard the old contract and put the new one in its place. When replacing an old contract in this way, you do not gain the ticket shown in that space. If there are no empty spaces on your player board or no fulfilled contracts to replace, you may not take this action to gain a new one. After completing this action, if there's a fully empty space in the contract's display, draw a replacement from the deck. Instead of signing a contract at this location, you may come here to sell a work of art as your action. So long as you have a work of art in your gallery and a contract with this side face up, showing its matching art form. Now check the value of the artwork that you're selling. And again, this is based on the current fame of the artist who created it. We'll see some other ways you can increase the fame of an artist, but let's say the marker was on this space. This space shows 3 green stars. So double check to make sure that the artist's signature token is on the correct position. The value shown here is what you'll collect from the bank when selling this piece of artwork. So collect that now and add it to your personal supply. Remove the art you sold from your gallery, but keep it beside your player board. And if you had other works of art in your gallery, you slide them to the left to fill in any empty spaces. Now return a signature token of that artist from beside your board back to the space beside that artist. Also, move one of the visitors of your choosing from your gallery to the plaza. They've left with one of your paintings. However, if you don't have a visitor in your gallery, you can still perform this action. You simply ignore the step of moving a visitor. I like to think of it as an online sale. Now flip the contract card you used face down. If there's an assistant on it, first move it to an empty desk. When flipping the contract over, orient it so that the top half matches the type of visitor you moved out of your gallery. So if you moved a pink visitor, this half would be on top. If you moved a brown one, then you would use this side. If you moved a white visitor, or you didn't have a visitor to move at all, then you can flip it to any side that you want. You will ignore the space on the bottom half, but this one is where you can place an assistant during a future executive action. You then gain the benefit represented by these icons. If you move to the media center location, you can promote an artist as your action. First, pick a discovered artist that you would like to promote and check the value shown here beside the thumbs up. You may use this action to increase the value by 1. This is considered to be a value of 0, so I could promote this artist to 1. Or if this artist was out, it begins at 1, so I could promote it to 2. To do this, you spend influence equal to the new promotion level you're increasing the artist to. So if I wanted to promote an artist to level 1, I would spend 1 influence by moving my marker 1 space lower on the influence track. You then collect a promotion token of that value and place it onto the artist in this space, returning to the supply any token that might have previously been there. So if later this artist was promoted to level 2, we would return this level 1 token back to the supply. After placing the promotion token, you now increase that artist's fame by 1 plus 1 for each collector in the active player's gallery. The yellow player in this case has 2 white collectors, meaning the artist's fame will increase by 3. And this puts the artist onto a new star value, 1 orange star. So players should then adjust any signature tokens they have for that artist accordingly on their value tracks. You also earn the bonus shown above the promotion token that you took. In this case, I'd gain 1 ticket in a color of my choosing. Also, keep in mind, if there are no promotion tokens of the new level you'd like to use, you cannot take this action. Instead of going to this location to promote an artist, you might instead use the Hire Assistants action. To do this, you may move up to as many assistants from the top spaces of this unemployment queue as you'd be able to fit into the current empty desks of your player board. In this case, I could hire up to 2 assistants, or if this assistant was in use somewhere else on the board, I could hire up to 3. Either way, for each assistant that you take, you have to pay the cost beside it. In this case, I'd have to pay 1 coin and then 2 more coins for a total of 3. And then I place these assistants here and gain any bonuses shown on these spaces. In this case, I would collect a brown ticket. The final location is called the International Market, and here you can perform an action to take a reputation token, which will come from one of the first 4 rows of this area. Keep in mind, this entire column is ignored in a 2-player game. Also, to take a token, you need to have access to it. Gaining access to tokens in the columns is based on the number of visitors that you have in your lobby, not in your gallery. For example, if I want any one of these tokens, my lobby would need to have at least 1 visitor of any type. which I do. So I have access to these tokens, but not to any of these because I would need a white visitor and either a pink or a brown visitor, which I don't have. But that's not all. To take a token from a particular row, you need to also have exhibited in your gallery or sold a painting of the indicated form. So as the yellow player, I haven't sold any paintings yet, but I do have this one in my gallery, and it matches this art form type, so I only have access currently to this token. I can then gain this token, and I place it on any empty space in this area of my board here, claiming the reward that I've covered up. Also remember, as shown here, when placing a reputation token, you must then move one visitor from your lobby to the plaza, if you're able to. Now you must move an assistant either from a desk or location to the emptied space. This means if you don't have an assistant you can move, you cannot take this action. No more than one assistant can ever be placed on a single space within this table, and assistants that are placed here are never returned to the player. You then gain an amount of influence equal to a value shown here above the column that you took a token from. So in this case, the yellow player would gain 3 additional influence. The other action you may instead take by going to this location is to make an offer for an art of international renown. You do this by placing one of your available assistants onto any of the spaces of these bottom 3 rows that you have access to. Again, first checking for visitors in your lobby, and then paying a cost in coins equal to the value shown in that row back to the bank. Once again, in a 2-player game, you ignore these spaces, and assistants placed in this way will not be returned to you. However, the player once again gains the influence shown above the column that they placed into, and they gain the bonus underneath of the assistant that they placed. Any assistants placed on this table will also be useful during endgame scoring, as we'll see. Those are all of the main actions of the game, but there are some additional rules that we need to go over. For example, we've seen some of the different ways that you can spend influence, but there's another very important way we need to look at. Anytime you take an action that increases the fame of an artist, you can spend influence to increase it further. For example, when you buy a painting from an artist or you promote an artist, that will cause their fame to go up, and at that moment, you can reduce your influence to the next space showing a star to increase the fame by an additional space. In fact, you can reduce it past several stars all at once to increase the fame by that number of stars. So in this case, however much fame this artist was going to be increased by, it now goes up an additional 2 spaces. Alternatively, anytime you need to spend money, you may move your influence marker back on the track to a previous space showing this money icon. This will gain you 1 additional money that you can spend. Ignore the value shown inside of the icon. That's used during final scoring. And you can move backwards on the track multiple times to these different icons, gaining 1 money for each. But the coins you gain this way must be spent on the action you are currently taking. That said, you can do this even if you have enough money in your personal supply to fully pay the cost of the action you're resolving. If your marker ever reaches this end of the influence track, any additional influence you would gain is simply ignored. Also, at the end of a turn in which the first stack of tickets has been depleted, there is an intermediate scoring step which is resolved before the next player takes their turn. This is shown here, and these icons are pretty common, so let's learn how they work. The large pink circle in the background represents influence, so this means each player now gains 2 influence for each VIP visitor in their gallery, and 1 for each collector in their gallery. The brown circle represents money, so now each player gains from the bank coins equal to 2 times the number of investors in their gallery and 1 times the number of collectors. As tickets are spent, they go into a common discard pile. If you would ever be owed a ticket and there's none of the color that you'd be allowed to take, for example, in this case, if you were trying to collect a brown ticket, you instead remove a ticket of any other type that is still in the box office and then take a ticket of the color that you wanted from the discard pile. If there happen to be no tickets in the box office area, you just take tickets directly from the discards. As we've seen, an artist's fame can rise over the course of a game, but if that fame would ever exceed 18, it's moved to this space. They become a celebrity and retire. The player who causes this to happen takes one of these celebrity tokens, places it on the artist's tile, and gains 5 coin from the bank. Keep in mind, the celebrity artist is retired and will not produce additional works of art for the rest of the game, except for a player who may still have that artist's signature token on their commission space. Any works of art currently exhibited in players' galleries by this celebrity artist become masterpieces. Players with at least one masterpiece in their gallery are now allowed to use this fourth space, and may continue to do so as long as they exhibit a masterpiece. So those are all of the rules pertaining to the things you can do in the game. And the game will continue with players taking turns until any two of the following conditions are met. Either the box office no longer contains tickets, two or more artists have become celebrities, or the bag is empty of visitors. And I do want to mention, during the game, you can look into the bag to see how many visitors are there and of which type. Just make sure you mix them up again before drawing new ones. As soon as any two of those listed conditions are true, the round will continue until you're back to the first player. Then, starting with that player and in turn order, each gets one more turn. But during those turns, kicked out pieces do not gain kicked out actions. Just return them to the appropriate space. Now the final scoring takes place, and you can use the symbols here on the board as a guide, but let's go through each of them together. First, score each column of the international market. The player with the most assistance in the first column gains 6 money. The player with the second most gains 3, and if you have more than 2 players, the third most gains 1. A player with no assistance in a column cannot gain any money this way. In the case of a tie, add the money from the tied positions together and split it amongst the tied players evenly, rounding down. So if 2 players are tied for most assistance, as we have here, we'll add the 6 and the 3 together for 9 and give each player 4 coins. You repeat this process for each of the columns, remembering to skip the second column in a 2-player game and awarding coins as shown here at the bottom. Now players score their gained reputation tokens. The symbols will award a certain amount of influence and or money, as explained here on the back of the rulebook. We won't go over each one, but for example, this token gives the player 1 influence and 2 money for each VIP visitor they currently have in their gallery. Now, for each work of art currently exhibited in a player's gallery, they gain money equal to its current sale value. Don't remove the art from your gallery, just collect the money. Now the renowned works of art are auctioned off. These are the pieces of artwork that we put on the easels during the setup. Have each player total the value of all their assistants that they placed on these 3 bottom rows of the international market. Their value is equal to the dollar value of that row. For example, the yellow player has 2 assistants on this row, which are valued at 1 each for a total of 2. The purple player has 1 assistant worth 3 and another worth 6 for a total of 9. The player with the highest total chooses any one piece of artwork on an easel and puts it in their gallery, even if there wouldn't be room for it, or with their sold artwork. The importance of this decision we'll come to understand in just a moment. Either way, they then gain in money the sale value of that art as if it had been created by the most famous artist of that art form. Now repeat this process with the player having the second highest value within these 3 rows of the table, claiming a remaining piece of artwork, and you continue this way until all players with assistants on those rows have claimed art, or, as in the case here, the easels are all empty. If multiple players' assistants are tied for their value here, the tied player with the highest value in the third column breaks the tie. But if there's no assistants in that column, check the second, and then the first. Keep in mind, a player cannot claim a piece of renowned artwork if they have no assistants on any of these rows. Now players score their curator cards. These will show different sets of artwork that, if present in your gallery, will gain you the money shown. Each set may only be scored once, but you may use the same piece of artwork in more than one set. In this case, the purple player has artwork that includes these 3 types of art forms, which matches this set, so they would gain 10 coins. Now you score your art dealer cards. These work the same way, but instead the sets are based on artwork that you've sold. In this case, the player only sold 1 painting, but fortunately it's of the type that is shown here in a set by itself, so the player would gain 5 coins. Finally, players receive money based on their position on the influence track, gaining the amount shown on their space, or if there isn't one on the space closest to it, lower down the track. The player who now has the most total money wins. If there's a tie, the tied player with the most artwork, both exhibited and sold, wins. If there's still a tie, the tied player with the most visitors in their gallery wins, and if there's still a tie, the tied player with the most hired assistants wins. If there's still a tie, the tied players share the victory. Now, some of you might be thinking, wow, there's a lot here that I have to remember when I'm trying to play this game. But that's why I want to bring you back to this player aid, because one is included for each of the players in the game, and it will define for you all of the different actions you can take, including a breakdown of the steps that you follow, even for the executive actions and kicked out ones as well. On the back side, you'll find information of various elements you'll encounter in the game, like money, influence, fame, and tickets, telling you what they're used for and how you get them. And the different symbols that you'll find on tokens and cards are also explained right here. So hopefully this makes for a pretty good combination, with the player aid reminding you about what to do and this video explaining how to do it. And that's everything you need to know to play the Gallerist. There are some rules for solo play, but I'll leave that for you to discover on your own. If you have any questions about anything that you saw here, don't hesitate to put them in the comments below, and I'll gladly answer them as soon as I get a chance. But until the next episode, thanks for watching.